So one thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs. I've never said, da-da-da-da-da-da, bop, bop, bop. He'd go down the stairs, wouldn't hold on. I said, it's great. I don't want to do it. I guess I could do it, but eventually bad things are going to happen.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that.
Mocking a Harvard law degree is a risky move, even by Trump's usual standards. For a second, it worked. People laughed, clips spread, outrage followed the familiar script. Then, Obama responded in a way no one expected. No bragging, no resume talk, just a few measured words, delivered so calmly they drained the room of energy. Reporters paused. Commentators stumbled. Suddenly, the joke felt less like satire and more like a misfire. It wasn't meant to go viral, and that's exactly why it did.
Obama cheated on the election, and we have it cold, hard, blue, and it's getting even more so because the stuff that's coming in is not even believable. So, and you should mention that every time they give you a question that's...
And I think we became a little bit complacent over the years. We assumed that things would continue to get better, that our democracy would become more inclusive, that it would become more fair, that we'd make...
Before we go any further, hit like and subscribe, because this is one of those moments you don't want to miss. No one thought this exchange would turn into something people would replay, dissect, and quietly argue about long after the cameras stopped rolling. At first glance, it looked like just another chapter in America's endless political brawl, where insults fly faster than facts and volume usually wins.
On the side of science and reason and common sense. Because they know that if the United States does not act on big problems in smart ways, nobody will. But this is not just Mr. Trump. Look at the statements that are being made by the other candidates. There's not a single candidate in the Republican primary that thinks we should do anything about it.
Donald Trump mocking Barack Obama's Harvard law degree felt familiar, almost routine, like a move pulled from a deck he had used for years. What made this moment different wasn't the insult itself, but what followed. Instead of fireworks, the room got something far rarer in modern politics: restraint, clarity, in a response that flipped the power dynamic in real time.
Ever wish you were running against Donald Trump? Does he ever wish you could climb in there? I saw the vice president said he wanted to fight him the other day.
You know, I think Hillary's doing just fine. I am enjoying campaigning on her behalf. And also campaigning for Senate and House candidates, because look, we joke about Donald Trump.
The setting carried weight before anyone spoke. The National Constitution Center in Philadelphia hosted a televised forum on the American presidency, a place meant to evoke history, seriousness, and reflection rather than spectacle.
President Biden and Vice President Harris were down there meeting with local officials and comforting families, asking how they could help. And Donald Trump at a rally just started making up stories about the Biden administration withholding aid from Republican areas and siphoning off aid to give to undocumented immigrants. Just made the stuff up. Everybody knew it.
On stage sat two former presidents representing not just opposing parties, but two very different views of power, leadership, and public life. The audience was a mix of journalists, scholars, political insiders, and everyday citizens, all expecting tension. This wasn't a rally, a late-night monologue, or a social media shouting match. It was meant to be a conversation about leadership, experience, and the future of American democracy. From the start, the contrast was clear. Trump leaned forward, interrupted often, reacted to the crowd, and fed off immediate feedback. He smiled at laughs, paused for applause, and seemed to measure success by noise. Obama sat back, hands folded, listening closely, answering with context and longer arcs of thought, barely reacting to the room at all. Where Trump spoke about broken systems and elites pretending to know better than ordinary people, Obama acknowledged frustration while stressing complexity, responsibility, and the risks of tearing things down without understanding how they work.
I've talked to the president like Trump now several times over the course of this transition. What have you tried to impress on him about the job?
The conversations have been cordial. He has been open to suggestions. And the main thing that I've tried to transmit is that there's a difference between governing and campaigning. So that what he has to appreciate is, as soon as you walk into this office after you've been sworn in, you're now in charge of the largest organization.
The audience listened politely, but tension kept building. It was clear neither man was really engaging the other yet. The turning point came when the moderator shifted to questions about expertise, education, and leadership. The topic was almost designed to spark a collision. Did credentials matter? Had governing become detached from real life? Did academic backgrounds actually prepare leaders for hard decisions? Trump saw the opening immediately. He bristled at the academic framing, angled his body toward Obama, and moved in for what he clearly thought would land as a knockout. Then came the jab that sucked the air from the hall. Trump pointed at Obama and mocked his Harvard law degree, reducing it to a symbol of elitism, talk, and inaction.
I think that part of the reason you've seen Michelle passionate in this election,
Yes.
part of the reason that we get involved as much as we have, is not just because we think Hillary's going to be a great president, but it's also because there is something qualitatively different about the way Trump has operated in the political sphere.
He contrasted Obama's years in office with his own image as a builder and a doer, framing Harvard as a factory for speeches instead of results. Leaning into the microphone, he called the degree a waste, confident he had voiced what many of his supporters already believed about intellectual credentials. The reaction was immediate but uneven. Supporters laughed and applauded. Reporters exchanged looks that mixed surprise with anticipation. The moderator shifted, ready to intervene if things escalated. Trump sensed momentum and paused, soaking in the noise. The silence felt intentional, not awkward. It was the kind of pause meant to claim control. When Obama finally leaned forward, the atmosphere changed. Everyone knew whatever came next would be deliberate.
Become okay. Why would we go along with that? And by the way, I'm sorry, gentlemen. I've noticed this especially with some men who seem to think Trump's behavior, the bullying and the putting people down, is a sign of strength. And I am here to tell you that is not what real strength is.
Obama spoke calmly, but his voice carried across the room with unexpected force. He acknowledged the point directly. Yes, he went to Harvard. Yes, he was proud of his law degree. There was no defensiveness, no hedging. He owned it, instantly deflating the insult. Then he shifted away from Trump's words and toward what they implied. He explained that they simply saw education differently. For him, Harvard wasn't a status symbol. It was a hard-earned opportunity made possible by scholarships, loans, and relentless work. He reminded the audience he hadn't been born into wealth or a real estate empire. His path was shaped by a single mother and a grandmother who worked tirelessly, by financial uncertainty, and by the understanding that education was one of the few bridges available when there was no safety net.
Extreme views were not in my White House. I wasn't embracing them. I wasn't empowering them. I wasn't putting the weight of the United States government behind extremist views. And that is when we have
the weight of the United States government.
The room grew quieter, not because the story was dramatic, but because it was grounded and personal. Obama reframed the degree not as a badge of superiority, but as a tool, a way for someone with limited resources and an unconventional background to earn a seat at a table that was otherwise closed. He spoke about education as possibility, not prestige, as preparation to advocate, negotiate, and push back against systems stacked against ordinary people. Education, he said, wasn't empty talk. It was about reading the fine print, understanding consequences, arguing for those without lobbyists, and building institutions meant to outlast any single personality. Leadership, in his framing, was stewardship, not spectacle.
You can't manage it the way you would manage a family business. You have to have a strong team around you. You have to have respect for institutions and the process to make good decisions because you are inherently reliant on other folks.
How has he impressed you?
You know, he is somebody who I think is very engaging and gregarious.
You like him?
You know, I've enjoyed the conversations that we've had.
He didn't present himself as perfect or suggest education alone guaranteed good governance. Knowledge, he said, only mattered when paired with service and accountability. The law degree wasn't the achievement, it was the starting point. When he turned back toward Trump, there was no hostility. If Trump wanted to call that a waste, he was free to do so. Then Obama widened the lens, speaking to Americans who knew what it meant to climb without a safety net, to study when success wasn't expected, and to navigate systems not built for them. He left a quiet contrast hanging in the air: status versus access. Slowly, applause began in the back rows. Not explosive, not performative, but steady. It spread forward, row by row, until much of the audience stood. This wasn't rally energy. It felt heavier, more reflective, as if people were responding to a truth rather than a punchline.
It's been harder for people to vote, that the votes would be counted rather than suppressed. And what we forgot is that history doesn't always move in a straight line, and it's not always 2 steps forward and another 2 steps forward. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and a step back. And we're in a moment right now where not just gerrymandering, but efforts at voter suppression, efforts at questioning the results.
Cameras cut to Trump. His expression had changed. The smile was gone, replaced by a tight, flushed look. He opened his mouth, searched for a response, and said nothing. For the press, the moment was jarring because it broke expectations. They had prepared for a clash, a viral exchange, something easily clipped and shared. Instead, they witnessed a contrast between 2 visions of leadership, one built on volume, provocation, and branding, the other on narrative, restraint, and lived experience. In the hours that followed, headlines focused less on the insult and more on the response. Even in shortened clips, the core of the moment survived because it wasn't about a single line. It was a coherent story. Obama's words worked because they aligned with his demeanor in history. There was no gap between performance and principle, which made the response hard to dismiss as spin.
Real strength is about working hard and carrying a heavy load without complaining. Real strength is about taking responsibility for your actions and telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. Real strength is about helping people who need it and standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves. That is what we should want for our daughters.
By refusing to escalate, he forced the audience to focus on substance instead of spectacle. Trump had used a tactic that usually worked, turning credentials into liabilities and mocking institutions many voters distrusted. In most settings, that approach generated energy. In this room, it ran into a narrative that redefined what those credentials meant. Mockery lost its edge when set against a story of access, effort, and purpose. For viewers watching later, the moment offered something rare. It showed how power can shift without shouting, how authority can assert itself through calm. It challenged the idea that winning requires domination, suggesting instead that sometimes the most disarming move is slowing down and telling the fuller story.
The 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd size.
In the end, the exchange wasn't really about Harvard or personal rivalry. It was about competing ideas of leadership in a media culture that rewards immediacy over reflection. Trump played to the crowd he knew, confident in a strategy that had served him well. Obama played the long game, trusting that clarity and context still mattered. That's why the press was stunned, not because Obama delivered a devastating insult, but because he chose not to. In a culture hooked on escalation, he chose explanation. Long after the applause faded and the forum ended, what lingered wasn't the mockery, but the stillness after Obama's reply. In that silence, the reversal was complete.
You now start seeing the politicization of the military, deliberately. When you have what looks like a deliberate end run around not just a concept, but a law that's been around for a long time, posse comitatus, that is a genuine effort to weaken how we have understood democracy.
The loudest voice was quieted, not by force, but by perspective. In modern American politics, that may be the most disruptive move of all. The moment stuck because it exposed something uncomfortable about how arguments are usually won. Dominance doesn't always come from aggression. Sometimes it comes from refusing to play the game. By choosing composure over combat, Obama shifted the audience from spectators craving drama into listeners weighing meaning. That shift decided everything. There was no final jab, no clever zinger, yet the exchange resonated because it felt complete. In a culture trained to reward noise, quiet confidence proved it could still command the room and rewrite the story in real time.